like to call the Monessen City Council special meeting on October 30th at 3:30 p.m. to order. Roll call, please.
Councilman Grigger.
Here.
Councilman Orchakowski.
Here.
Councilman Coles.
Here.
Mayor Sherrill.
Here.
And Councilor Lois Thomas absent.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to open the floor to public comment on agenda items.
I'd like to ask a question. This motion C. First off, how much is the excess money you're trying to move?
There is, the current balance is $544,660.48. The reallocation would be $150,000 to the general account. The new debt service balance would be $394,660.48. And the 2021 obligation per the auditor's report is $466,273. So if $100,823.20 was paid on May 24th, 2021, totaling $365,449.80, which is the remaining balance due in 2021. And that will leave $29,210.68 of the balance at the end of the year in 2021 in debt service. We'd also need to adjust the percentage going into debt service for the next year's budget because the percentages were off. So we're underfunding general fund and overfunding debt service fund.
Is there an ordinance that specifies that money in that debt service fund is really intended for capital projects? Can you just move it to general fund?
This was at the recommendation of the auditors, so.
But is that what the ordinance really says within the city?
I don't know. I have not seen the ordinance, but the money is overfunded, or the fund is overfunded. So they said that we need to change this with a resolution.
Okay, but that doesn't address how the money gets used after you move it out of the debt service fund.
It's going into the general fund.
And that's what I'm saying. There are ordinances that say that has to be used for capital projects, as I recall.
No, there's no control. It's just a general fund.
We're having this cash flow and we're restricting ourselves by all of the other funds. If we weren't over-restricting some of the funds, the general fund wouldn't be so bad off, and then we wouldn't be as bad off in general as we are.
Which goes back to the original budget at the beginning of the year, yes, I understand.
Yeah, debt service is overfunded.
Or the revenue was underestimated.
And debt service was overfunded.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's it.
And actually, I almost forgot to call the solicitor, so let me do that before we move on. Hey Tim, you're on speaker. We just started. We're down through public comment. We're about to start these motions. I almost forgot to call you, so sorry.
Hey, I just want to confirm. So we have who's all here from council?
Tony, Gil, Dawn, and myself.
Tony, Gil, Dawn, and yourself physically present there, or
Yes.
people on the phone? Okay.
Physically
so
present.
four council members are physically present.
Yes.
Okay. And I assume and I want to confirm, so for the record, so the meeting was the meeting notice was in the newspaper at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting.
Yep.
And a proposed agenda was on the city's website at least 24 hours in advance.
Yep, and on the door.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Okay. So item A, a motion to rescind the acceptance of a bid for the Civic Center air conditioning project. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any questions? Call the roll.
Councilor Grigger.
Aye.
Councilor Orchakowski.
Yes.
Councilman Coles.
Yes.
Mayor Sherrill.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to re-advertise the acceptance of bids for the Civic Center air conditioning project. Is there a second? Any questions?
You know, speaking to some people about this, has anybody looked into what the air conditioning cost is going to be when this is put in? That building is not insulated.
We need a place for the children to go.
How about answering my
It's
question?
a block building.
Answer my question. It's a simple question.
I don't believe anybody's looked into it.
No, and
That's
it's
okay.
not,
That's all
and it's
I'm
not
asking.
necessary.
It's probably
a-
gonna be
it's a
what it
public
was
service.
before.
And it will act
It'll be
as
electric.
backup in case the furnace does go.
Thank you, Don. That's all I was asking.
I know no one's looked into it. You guys go back and forth all the time, sometimes just be direct, get it over with. No one's looked into it. We need it, you need a heating center, you need a cooling center. That is actually part of our plan,
What plan is that?
city's emergency action plan.
Okay.
Call the roll.
Councilman Chakowski?
Yes.
Councilman Coles?
Yes.
Councilman Greider?
Aye.
Mayor Sherrod?
Yes. And I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 31 of 2021, a resolution of the City of Monessen, Westmoreland County, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, authorizing the reallocation of excess debt service account funds. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions?
Yes. Again, I know you might have mentioned this, but I want to know specifically what this money is going to be used for. Because it cannot be used for payroll or anything like that.
I don't think there's a plan on what it's going to be used for. We were advised that the debt service fund was over allocated.
Okay, you were advised by auditors. What is our solicitor's position? Because he takes the legal stand over an auditor.
Tim? Tim, are you there?
But yeah, I'm sorry. So this is the question on the reallocation. Is this a question on, this is the reallocation motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's clarify and confirm exactly what the rules are with respect to reallocations or allocations. So if there's ever a situation where, starting point, whenever the city sets a tax millage, there are limits in terms of what the tax levies are and what those levies can be and what they can be used for. So if there's a tax levy for recreation, or there's a tax levy for debt service, or whatever, there's specific ones other than the general levy, those tax dollars can only be used for that specific levy item, right? So even if, you levy a tax for, let's say it's a fire department tax, for example, and you bring in $100,000 specifically from that fire department tax millage, you can only use those funds for fire department tax purposes, or fire department purposes. Let's say you only use $90,000 of them, and then there's $10,000 left over. That doesn't mean that you can then, necessarily use any of the remaining portion just for any other general fund purposes. That has to still continue to be limited to that specific purpose. Now, that's important to keep in mind, because once again, if it's specifically money that's collected under a tax millage for debt service, then it has to be used for debt service. And what happens though sometimes, and like I said, I don't know this situation, that's why I'm asking this question, is sometimes whenever that allocation is made, because you guys are getting checks, all big checks that aren't individually separated out for tax purposes into the individual millages. When somebody pays their taxes, they're just paying in one check. And then the city has to manually go through and reallocate those depending on, what the millages were for any given year when the tax money comes in and what that would have appropriately been. And there have been situations then that I'm aware of, I'm not saying in Monessen, but there are situations in other municipalities where that allocation was not correct. So there was more money that was allocated for a specific purpose that was not in line with what the general millage was. And then in that case, that's okay. Then it's okay to reallocate based on, the prior misallocation, so to speak. I just want to make sure that we're following the rules in the third by state code that would say that, if there's a millage that money was collected for a debt service purpose, that if its transfer results from a misallocation when that money originally came in, as opposed to it's just excess money left over because that service
My understanding is it is a misallocation, and that's happened before with the library fund, for example, too, where the library fund gets $50,000, like that's typically the set, but there's some years where it's $52,000 or whatever the case may be. Obviously too small for us to go through the trouble of reallocating those funds, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, if it's a misallocation previously, that's okay. I mean, that happens, and, you know, so there sometimes is difference there, but once again, we always want to keep in mind that, you know, when the tax millage dollars, when they come in, they need to continue to follow whatever millage they were being assessed under, and we can't just, you know, transfer between uses, specifically under the third-class city code. But a misallocation correction from initially is okay. That's why I wanted to clarify that, so everybody knows exactly what they're doing and what the basis of the decision is and the action is.
Right.
So we're saying it was a misallocation, that the auditors identified it as a misallocation initially from the money coming in, as opposed to this is just extra money that came in under the debt service that we're not actually going to need for debt service, and therefore we can turn around and use it elsewhere.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I mean, John, you were in that conversation too.
That's what the auditor stated.
Okay, I mean, once again, that's my only concern from a legal standpoint. One, you know, obviously you guys are doing it the right way. Any sort of interfund transfers need to be done by go to council. But like I said, the other key question was the one I asked about whether it was a misallocation or just a redirect of excess funds. So, like I said, I just want to make sure we're following the procedure that we're required to under the third-class city codes.
All right. Anything else?
So was that a finding in the 2020 audit or the 2019 audit?
It was when they met with us about the 2020 audit, they brought it to our attention the other day.
Where's the 2020 audit?
I was under the impression that it was sent to you. You asked for it the other day, did you not?
I asked if it was out there. John didn't respond back to me.
Yeah, I thought it was sent to you. There, I know there's a correction that needs
No,
to
we'll
be
give it
made.
at the meeting on
Yeah,
Tuesday.
there's a correction that needs to be made. There was, I think the solicitor caught, there were two funds that were supposed to be separate in the audit report. So the final report isn't done yet, so.
So you're asking us to make a decision on something that not all of us were all part of the conversation. And that I don't feel comfortable with, because there was no explanation given to all of council from the auditors. That should have been in a letter.
It's 2021, it's this year.
It should have been a letter then to all of council explaining that.
It-
Am I wrong, Tim?
Well, so if it's a recommendation from the auditor, it would not be uncommon for the auditors to present that at a meeting with, you know, city administration. It wouldn't necessarily need to be a formal letter that's actually sent to the city. You know, there's a lot of times, just part of this audit meetings, there are, you know, recommendations that are made or ideas that are given. They wouldn't need to formally be included, but if it's for 2021, you know, generally, something like that would be included at the end whenever the 2021 audit is done.
But we haven't even started that. We're still in 2020.
Well, obviously.
I wouldn't think that would be started.
No.
Yeah, that.
So-
absolutely.
So Tim, again, does that mean we should get a letter verifying this from the auditors?
Well, I mean, you wouldn't, I mean, it's not necessary, it's not, like I said, common necessarily for an auditor to actually present an actual written letter. When they have like an audit committee meeting, so to speak, you know, typically there's a lot of recommendations that are made verbally, and, you know, it's the audit committee's responsibility to vet those and take those back to the you know, the governing body of the municipality, which in this case would be a city council. So, you know, it really wouldn't be really common for them to present a formal letter outside of the audit that would, you know, have specific recommendations.
So in that case, then why wouldn't we have them actually come to a meeting,
present both of those, and then they would be able to put out their recommendations.
Because the auditors, which I will be reading next week, presented a letter as to why they're not coming to a public meeting because of the political pressure that they've been put under, and I will be reading that at the next meeting. So the audit, they want, in order to remain independent, they need the audit that is forthcoming to stand by itself independently.
Well, by law, though, they have to present it.
They don't. It needs to be publicly available, which it will be. And I believe the solicitor is aware of this.
That is true, that is true. So there's no requirement that the auditors actually present the audit at a public meeting. It just needs to be received by council. So, you know, we do need to make sure that all council members are kept abreast and are provided with, you know, most recent versions. And if there's a final version that comes in, you know, we need to make sure that's distributed to all council as well.
Which I'm still waiting for.
And then at the end of the day, you know, that presentation is effectively made, no, it's not don't think of it as like a presentation where it's, you know, specific time that's set aside, where somebody goes through and talks about it. Yeah, it's just basically just presenting the thing, saying, here's the audit, you know, we're receiving this audit, accepting this audit, and we're distributing this audit or making it available to the general public, because that's the action that makes it a public document, makes it an official document. It doesn't, like I said, have to actually require the auditor to come and physically present it at a meeting under the third class meeting.
So if the public has any questions, there's nobody to ask questions for.
I mean, they would be asking it to council. Yeah, they would be asking it to council.
What was interesting is, I was sitting here, well, in the outbuilding over there, and Cipher and Cipher presented an audit. And who was that guy? Ernie Telegraphis asked the presenter for some questions. And that particular auditor from Cipher and Cipher told Mr. Telegraphis that he didn't have to respond to his questions.
Wasn't aware of that. That'd be interesting.
Well, you were sitting there.
I would think you would want to do that.
You were sitting there.
Doesn't mean. I'm saying I agree with that.
Cipher is accurate because once again, keep in mind, public comment at a meeting is just that, it's public comment. There's no requirement for public comment being public back and forth, public discussion, public answering session. So, you know, I don't want to interject, but no, I mean, Cipher's position on that is also accurate.
I'm aware. Okay, we have a motion on the floor, Mr. President.
Call the roll.
Councilor Coles?
Yes.
Councilor Gregor?
Aye.
Councilor Chakowski?
No.
Mayor Sherrod?
Yes. A motion to adjourn at 3:48 p.m. Thank you.